everyone, it's me, Aaron, Professor Thorgy, your guide to all things geeky, and welcome to another episode of Comic Class, the show every single week on this channel where we just geek out about comic books. And today, we're going to be talking about DC Comics. And I know we've been talking a lot about DC Comics recently, and about how amazing Rebirth has been. It is truly stunning to me how well that line-wide relaunch and rebranding has completely worked on almost every level for DC Comics. However, there is a corner to DC Comics that not a lot of people have been talking about recently. I'm referring to Vertigo. So DC has decided that this week they are going to relaunch many of their old Vertigo titles and completely rebrand them as well to see if what worked with Rebirth will also work with Vertigo. Now before we begin, let me just give you a little backstory on what Vertigo Comics is. DC back in the 80s, they were publishing some more mature series. However, they didn't really have a place for them. But as Alan Moore started to tell his Swamp Thing series, and it started to do things like travel to the center of all creation and ponder what really is good and evil, DC looked at that and went, you know what? We like this idea of having a shared universe with these darker characters, but it seems kind of weird to have a character go on a massive drug trip and then team up with Superman. So let's separate them into their own little pocket universe, into their own line, and we're going to call it Vertigo Comics. And this is where many characters like John Constantine and Swamp Thing, characters who did more mature things like drink and smoke and curse and sacrifice their junkie friends to a horde of fly demons, where all of them resided. You know, and they told stories over there that weren't exactly appropriate for younger readers. But they decided to experiment even further and go out there and find brand new creators who had completely different stories that they wanted to tell that didn't tie into any universe, didn't even feature people with powers of any kind. Things that were totally different from anything we had really seen from big major comic book companies before, and they started publishing them under the Vertigo title. That's where we got books like Why the Last Man, which to this day I still include in my top 5 favorite comics of all time. However, as time went on, Vertigo started to turn to something that it wasn't. DC looked at Vertigo and at some of their more mature heroes over there like Swamp Thing and Constantine and said, you know what, they're doing alright over there. But if we just downplay all that mature stuff and downplay all that really dark stuff that isn't appropriate for all ages, we could pick them up and move them over to the regular DC universe and they would sell like hotcakes, right? They were wrong. So from that point forward, Vertigo just decided to focus more on its original properties, on those series that were solely the creation of Vertigo Comics, completely separate stories that were their own things. Here's the problem though, Image started to do the exact same thing, and Image let these creators completely own that property. Whereas if you create something for Vertigo, DC still got a chunk of that change. DC still had some of the rights to that. Over at Image, it was totally your own thing, so the only people who were really at that point creating things for Vertigo rather than going over to Image were the people who couldn't get hired by Image, so brand new creators who were really desperate to get in the door, or they were people who were writing stuff for DC Comics, so they were contractually obligated to not go over to Image. But as time went on, more and more creators who signed on to DC Comics decided, yeah, I'm not signing that part that says I can't do creator-owned stuff over at Image, or the ones who had already signed it found loopholes in their contracts that still allow them to go over to Image, so Vertigo Comics was slowly fading away like a Marty McFly photo. But this week, DC has decided, you know what? It's time to do for Vertigo what we did for Rebirth. It's time to completely rebrand it and realize what makes it special. It's time to go back to our roots and realize this is what started Vertigo Comics. This is the thing that makes it special. It's the thing that separates it from Image Comics and from all other independent companies and makes people specifically want to come to Vertigo Comics. And that is the universe of its own weird, crazy, imaginative, darker characters. However, I should clarify something. When I say that Vertigo is going back to its roots, I mean the idea of creating a side to their universe dedicated to more mature heroes. However, it's not exactly the same as when Vertigo began. They are indeed updating a few things, which is always a good idea. Because when Vertigo began, what was popular in mature comic books back then was horror. So that's why you got books like Swamp Thing, Hellblazer, House of Mystery. But if you look around the market now at independent mature books and you ask what's popular today, the answer is, for lack of a better term, weird. If you look at the independent market today, the more popular books are things like Odyssey or Saga. It's books where they just go, what is the craziest stuff that we can think of throw all that at the wall, and that's what they're attempting to do with their books. Now, if you guys have been watching the Professor Thorgy channel for a while, then you know that I am indeed a fan of horror comics, so I won't lie, if Vertigo was trying to relaunch itself, I would have loved to have seen books like Hellblazer return to Vertigo, I would have loved to have seen a brand new Swamp Thing Vertigo series, but at the same time, I fully understand why they're doing this. This is what's popular today, and when you look at the books that they have chosen to relaunch under this Young Animals line, it totally makes sense. You should not have a Doom Patrol horror series. You should have a weird, crazy, far out there, trippy Doom Patrol series. And today, the Doom Patrol series premiered. This was the big book that they wanted to launch this entire line, and they got Gerard Way, who has become famous for writing books like True Lives of the Fabulous Killjoys and The Umbrella Academy, both of which are books that embrace totally crazy, far out there ideas. He was also the lead singer of a small band called My Chemical Romance that defined my high school years. So yes, Gerard Way is writing the new Doom Patrol series, and as I said, this is the perfect book to push out there this line of crazier, wilder, more mature heroes. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, Doom Patrol was created way back in the early 60s, and they were meant to be DC's first weird team. They were the team of reject heroes. They were heroes who had all had something horrible happen to them. They weren't the pretty Justice League characters who got up there on stage and said, hey, we're here to save the day. No, the Doom Patrol were the guys who worked in secret because nobody wanted to look at the weird robot man or the guy covered in bandages. It was actually a really imaginative idea at the time. In fact, just to give you an idea of what they meant and what they were supposed to represent, many people have accused Stan Lee of completely ripping off the idea of the Doom Patrol to create the X-Men. So think about all those things that the X-Men are supposed to represent and what they were about back in the 60s. That's kind of what the Doom Patrol was about. But then as time went along, the Doom Patrol just kind of faded away. But then when DC launched its Vertigo line, they picked up this plucky young writer from Europe called Grant Morrison. And they said, hey, have you got any ideas for Doom Patrol? And he said, oh, I can probably come up with something. And he turned in one of the craziest ideas for a series ever. He turned the Doom Patrol into that series that tackled all the weird, crazy stuff that the Justice League doesn't know about. In fact, in that book, they say the Justice League tackle common thugs, like Lex Luthor. That gives you an idea of the kind of stuff that they were handling if Lex Luthor was a common thug. They were fighting things like dimensional tapeworms that ate through reality. That's the kind of stuff that they went up against. So if you're going to try and relaunch all your Vertigo books to be about heroes that tackle weirder ideas, the Doom Patrol is the perfect series to do that with, and here's where the review comes in. And I have to clarify something to begin with. I like Gerard Way. However, there are people out there who think he is amazing, and I don't mean like a fringe small group, I mean like 90% of all comic book reviewers out there praise this guy and say he's amazing. When I read Gerard Way's books, like True Lives of the Fabulous Killjoys or The Umbrella Academy, I read it and I go, I see the good in this. I see why people would like it, I see why people would praise it, I see why this would have a dedicated fan base. I just don't know if it's for me. And that's perfectly fine. You are allowed to read a book and realize that it's for a different audience and not for you, as long as you don't come in there and just start going, well, this is terrible because I didn't like it. I like it, but even if I didn't like it, I would totally see why it has such a die-hard audience. I see why those books strike a chord with so many people. But to me, Gerard Way, he writes in lyrics, is the best way that I can describe him. And what I mean by that is that he will have characters say things that I read and go, that didn't really make a lot of sense. But if it was a song lyric, I would think it was really amazing. Like, there's so many times that characters will say things, and I'm like, I don't know if that's a metaphor or if you're saying it literally. Like, in this first issue of Doom Patrol, there is a moment where the main character that we're following, who is this ambulance driver, which I actually think is a really cool thing, of which I'll get into in a second, she says, my mother used to always say this to me, and then she flew into the sun. And I was like, is she like an astronaut? Like, did she actually fly into the sun? Or is that like a metaphor for just dying and going off to heaven? I don't know what you're saying here. Now again, that's just my own personal feelings about it. I'm in no way coming in here and judging it and saying, oh, that's bad writing, because it's not bad writing. It's just a different style of writing, and I can still look at it and go, even if it doesn't have an emotional impact on me, that's still the type of writing that I can look at and understand why it would have an emotional impact on someone. I can still look at it and go, this is why this audience would really dig that. And that's the first thing that I have to say about this book, is that if you were always in that camp, if you read Umbrella Academy and you're like, this is alright, but it's not really striking that chord with me that's striking with other people, I don't know if this is going to be the book that convinces you otherwise, but if you were that audience that always did feel that way about books like Umbrella Academy or True Lives of the Fabulous Killjoys, then you're gonna love this, because it is indeed that same style of writing, and I have to say, I actually think it's done even better here than it was done in Umbrella Academy and True Lives of the Fabulous Killjoys, because, like I said, I might read some of these lines and go, I don't know if that's meant to be a metaphor or if it's meant to be an actual literal thing, but I can still appreciate it on both levels. Now let's get into what this issue is actually about. This whole issue revolves around this brand new character called Casey Brink, and she is an ambulance driver because she always wanted to just do something good. She always just wanted to help people, which automatically makes me like the character. I mean, this is somebody out there who, even though they don't have great power, felt great responsibility and wanted to go out there and add something positive to the world. They wanted to go out there and actually help people. So I gotta say, automatically, right from the start, I like this character. So I have to give Gerard Way applause on that. He did a great job of introducing this character. From there, it just gets into the flat out crazy weird stuff. That's the thing that I have to say about this book. It's not really meant to tell a story in the first issue. The first issue is more meant to just establish this primary character and then set the tone for the whole series. I have to say, I actually think it did that pretty darn well, because you see her talking about really weird ideas with one of her coworkers, who's this big tough guy called Samson, who's just really good at his job as an ambulance driver and as a medic. And I'm like, okay, again, really good at being a medic, automatically like this guy, and I really hope he sticks around. He hasn't been on a lot of the covers or a lot of the promotional art for this book, but I automatically like this guy after one issue, so I really do hope that he sticks around as well. But one night they go out there and they discover Robot Man, who is one of the founding members of Doom Patrol, and he is currently injured because he just got done on a secret mission with Doom Patrol where he exploded a tiny pocket universe located within a gyro. Yeah, I just said that since it's a thing that happened. But yeah, as I said, this first issue is not meant to establish the story, it's meant to establish the tone, and the moment that you hear this character Samson saying, what if there's a pocket universe inside this gyro and everyone's living their lives and they don't understand? What if we exist within another gyro that someone else is about to eat out there? And then you see Robot Man inside the pocket gyro universe and the gyro just explodes when he self-destructs the whole thing. You know exactly what type of book this is going to be. So again, I have to applaud Gerard Way. He did a great job of setting the tone, but to me, my personal favorite moment that totally set up the tone and introduced us to a brand new character is when this singing telegram girl just shows up at Casey's apartment and says, oh hi, I just saw you on the subway and you look kind of upset, you look kind of sad, so I figured I would just give you this little ditty, sing you this little tune to try and cheer you up. And then she sings her like this happy birthday song, and when she does, Casey's asshole roommate explodes for no reason at all. Yeah, that's the kind of book that this is. So after reading this first issue, I think it did a really good job of introducing me to the protagonist. It did a really good job of setting up the tone of this book. And also, the other thing that did is it really meshed Gerard Way's writing style with Grant Morrison's writing style. I had no idea what kind of a book this was going to be, because when you look at the cover to this series, you see characters like Flex Mentallo up there, which was 100% a Grant Morrison creation, and no one has worked with it other than Grant Morrison. And I was like, so are you going to try and just rip off Grant Morrison? Are you going to try and copy him? Or is this going to be your own original take on these characters? In all honesty, it's kind of both, except I would never say it's a ripoff. It's more of an homage. This feels like Gerard Way going, this is what made Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol special. I am going to try and incorporate those things that made it special into my own original Doom Patrol series. And so far, I think he's succeeding. As I said, with these really weird, crazy books like this that feature far out there, imaginative ideas being written by these creators who specialize in that, it takes a couple issues for me to really form an opinion on it. But out of all those series that have attempted to do just that, This one has probably had the strongest first issue I've read. I cannot tell you how many first issues of series I've read where the whole premise of the book was we're going to go as far out there and crazy and imaginative as we possibly can, and look at it and go, this is just gobbledygook, it doesn't make any sense, it's just words being thrown on a page with weird images. This is not an actual story. I read this one and I went, this is so imaginative, I don't know quite what you're doing yet, but I totally got a sense of what you're going for. It totally does intrigue me enough to make me want to keep reading, and you do have this human character there who I do understand just enough of that I can still follow her along. This to me was really that right balance between so crazy you don't know what's happening and a relatable story that you can follow. So there you go, guys. That's my feelings on the first issue of Doom Patrol. You guys have been asking me on Twitter and Tumblr to talk about this issue for a while, so I decided, you know what, this is a special occasion. Let's just dedicate a whole episode of Comic Class to it. Plus, I've been wanting to talk about these new Young Animal series that have been announced for a long time, and I'm going to do that again after all of them come out. Just like I've been doing with the Rebirth books, where at the end of every single month I talk about all the new books that have come out. After all of these brand new Young Animal books have come out, I'm going to come in here and give you my thoughts on each of them. So if you want to see that episode, then make sure that you hit that subscribe button. But also hit that subscribe button if you just want to see any videos from me about the world of geekery, whether it has to do with comic books, video games, movies, or more. Also, if you like anything that you see on this channel, then make sure that you share it and also give us a thumb up. It is the best way to help out this channel. And let me know in the comments down below or on Twitter and Tumblr at Professor Thorgy how you felt about this first issue of Doom Patrol. Thanks again for watching, everyone. Come back next time. Bye.